don't we get into that? Only a week old, and it's already facing its first lawsuits, the assault weapons ban, including one from the Illinois State Rifle Association. Were you following this, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
So what do we know about this and other suits to come?
Well, I think all of this was completely predictable. I mean, this is going to get tested in court, and the advocates for the law knew that too. So, might as well get it started. But I think the bigger issue is enforcement on the ground.
Yes.
Right. At this, the courts will do whatever they do. But right now there is a whole slew of sheriffs all over the state of Illinois that are refusing to enforce this.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a law in the books that's not enforced, it's not much of a law.
And what's the common argument here in all these suits?
It's not, well,
it's infringing upon our Second Amendment rights.
We had one on the show from downstate Jefferson County who said it is infringing on the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. The thing is, that's his opinion. I mean, right now, it is the law of the state. It is going to be litigated. There is no injunction on it, as we know right now. So it is the law of the land. And in terms of the constitutionality, I know this is a thorny issue, but if you read the Second Amendment, it's the most confusing amendment there is. It's been interpreted every which way for hundreds of years. I mean, it was interpreted to not enumerate an individual right to bear arms for a long time. Because if you look at that clause, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of free state, the right to keep and bear
You're
arms.
such a journalist.
Tell the Supreme Court.
Yeah, their grammar was a little off. But, it's like so it's very confusing. It's being litigated. Obviously, a more conservative Supreme Court in many years has favored gun rights folks. But this whole question of banning assault weapons, there is a gray area. There's a case in Maryland, and it really hinges on the fact that are these rifles, are these weapons commonly used for personal defense? And there is an interpretation of the Second Amendment that it really does. It is about personal defense. Is it about arms that you use for personal defense? And there could be a conservative justice or two that says, you know what? These assault rifles, they're not commonly used for self-defense, and thus it's not unconstitutional to ban them. We just don't know.
Wasn't there a situation? Didn't New York State have a weapons restriction that the U.S. Supreme Court explicitly allowed to go forward without deciding on the merits? I mean, it's being challenged, but the Supreme Court was asked to stay it.
Right.
And they did not.
Right.
So that's to
interesting.
Me, that's the argument that really these sheriffs the sheriffs, most officials swear to uphold the Constitution, right?
Right.
So they can always say, "Hey, I took an oath. I swore to do this."
But again,
that's the argument against them is that even the U.S. Supreme Court, which everybody sort of assumes is ultimately going to rule in your favor, has said this law, at least in New York, should go forward.
And the other thing about enforcing it with the sheriffs, it's the Illinois State Police. It's a separate agency that's going to be charged with, administering the registration of folks who currently own these weapons. So the folks that do, we have to clarify. The folks that have, these weapons with 10 rounds or 15 rounds, AR-15s and whatnot, they get to keep them.
They get to keep them.
But they have to register them with the
Yeah.
State Rifle Association. So I said to one of these sheriffs, like, what exactly then are you going to not enforce? And he says, well, I'm not gonna arrest anyone if they're not complying and not registering with the state police. And then one of them suggested I might even take action against the state police if they try to register somebody's gun.
Yeah, legislators in support of the assault weapons ban definitely made concessions for some of these folks. And the enforcement, like Steve says, I mean, this is not just like counties downstate. We're talking like in DuPage, our second largest county in Illinois, which, obviously is suburbs right around us. So, yeah, I think that's a little concerning.
Well, there's a lot more news to come, folks, but first we're going to check in real quick with Lisa Labuz. We'll be right back with Paris Schutz, reporter and anchor at WTTW, Carrie Shepherd, lead producer at the podcast CityCast Chicago, and Steve Daniels with Crain's Chicago Business.